Welcome to Life on Life's Terms, episode 58. It's Justin
and it's Kenny.
We're going to get into things like men's organizations, the good, the bad, the ugly, what organizations are positive, some that are helping, some that aren't helping, and the responsibility of men's health and men in society. But before we get into those topics, we're going to do our shout-outs and get our bills paid by a person named Liam Connolly at Connolly Law. For all of your Canadian law, will, estate, and media issues, please Google Liam Connolly at Connolly Law. And for all of your counseling needs, such as addiction, family counseling, please Google adaras.ca. That's ADARS.ca. The famous Chris Suchit will be able to accommodate you through Skype or FaceTime for your mental health needs. And if you were looking for a curative discharge from a DUI here in the Edmonton area, you could also call Chris for that reference as well, and you may potentially be able to get a curative discharge from any DUI charges that you have incurred. Well, bills are paid.
Bills are paid.
How's your morning going so far?
Really good. Really good.
How are you liking recording in the morning nowadays?
Oh, it's way better.
I like it a lot too.
Way better.
Yeah. Listeners have asked us, what are we doing differently? Well, that's it. We're recording first thing in the morning, and we seem to be a little bit more chipper and more on it, so to say.
On point.
Yeah.
Well, after a day of work and working out and everything like that, I'm dragging ass.
Yeah, sometimes, right? Sometimes it almost feels like you need a nap.
Yeah.
Right before? Yeah. So men's organizations, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't know how many men are out there that know about MRAs, which is Men Rights Activist Group. I am labeling these sons of guns bad. I think that they are... Well, I find some of what they stand for is all about the idea of... the idea of women are bad. So like women are the perpetuation, or feminism is the perpetuation of oppression of men. Maybe in our Movember part 2, we kind of painted that, but that's actually not my thought. I don't believe that feminism is what perpetuated the oppression of men today. I just believe that it helped in the miscommunication of fundamental development of men. I think that was definitely a part of the ideology of it. The other thing that I find with MRAs is I understand most of what they say. I can even empathize with a lot of things that they say in regards to the court abuse issues when men are going for custody, so on and so forth. I get that, but they solely put this misdirection of anger towards the woman as opposed to the system. And you and I can both probably agree that we have manipulated the system to our best benefit.
Right now, yeah, absolutely.
And so in that capacity, when you are dealing with the law and the court system, essentially that's what you do. You manipulate it to the best of your ability, and let's face it, if there's an unfair advantage due to your gender or your sex or your claim to your identity, then why wouldn't you use it? Right? that's just human nature. That's we're not talking about what you should do in society. We're talking about what a human does as an animal, right? That's how we manipulate. That's how we got ahead in life, right?
Survival of the fittest.
I definitely live by a morality today that I do not manipulate, and I do that on purpose. I don't think I consciously look at things to make sure that I'm not manipulating a situation, and I go into it as honestly as I possibly can, because when we get into responsibility later on, it is my responsibility to keep my conscience clear, right?
Well, I don't have a negative feeling about the word manipulate. Like, you can use it in a negative way, but I like to manipulate like life in general, and like I manipulate my health by working out and eating good. I manipulate having a healthy relationship by being honest and trustworthy.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I guess. I just look at it as my morality dictates that I need to be honest. My morality. So I guess I'm exchanging the word manipulate to my morality dictates this.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe like I leverage things.
Sure.
I
guess it all essentially goes to the same place. We're just playing like a semantical game about a word.
Yeah.
Right? And sure, definitions are of your own making. They are subjective in your own understanding, but like bad is bad, good is good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like root base words are what they are. Any questions about MRA?
Yeah. So, like, what are some local men's rights activist groups?
So here in Edmonton, they have an MRA group. They do, or they kind of help out with family court lawyering, and they basically say, look, this judge wasn't good. MRA is a global organization, it looks like to me, and they're in many, many different places, and the topics that they advocate in are basically dictated by the geographical location. So
Yeah.
like here in the Edmonton area, it's like family court, so on and so forth. But when you look at, I think it's like Alabama, it's about domestic violence. So they kind of go along the line with domestic violence that it's 50-50. I kind of agree with that philosophy. Domestic abuse isn't just one-sided. I think it takes two people in order to tango kind of thing.
Hey, in Canadian, well, in Albertan Indigenous subculture, it's not love until she puts you in jail.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think Alberta itself here in Canada has the highest, I think we statistically have the highest domestic assault. Like when I went to jail here and I heard some guy talking about knocking out a girl, I was blown away that he was talking so openly about it, because if you did that shit out east, they would put you in PC with broken legs, broken arms, and a fucked up back.
Different ethics out there.
You can't talk about that.
Yeah.
And if you have that beef, you don't go into Gen Pop. Somebody will pop you if you do that.
Yeah.
Right? So like when I heard that here, I was kind of blown away that some guy was talking about beating the shit out of some chick, like openly, the way that he was talking about. I mean, it's one thing for a pimp to talk about slapping his hoe or whatever, right? It's a little bit different to talk about kicking some bitch in the face,
Kicking your old lady in the face.
And I'm using that actual terminology as in that's the way how I heard it. Like I don't actually reference women as bitches today or really back then. So I mean, that's just literally how I heard the terminology in jail, right? So I think, and MRA kind of goes along that line too. Well, I'm not going to say that they use that kind of terminology, but like I said, they definitely put a lot of blame on feminist groups, and then it's like women are against us. They definitely play like this kind of narrative where it's us against them, and so they play into the sexist role. That's kind of what I surmised from their online presence and actually going to their website. Like I went to their website and read stuff. It wasn't just listening to or reading what Reddit had said about them or what some asshole said about them. I actually went to their site and then formed my own opinion from that. And this is kind of my opinion of MRA. So yeah. If you're part of that organization, I hope you can make a change in there and hopefully change that direction. And I bid you well in leaving the bitterness towards women. You know, without women, we can't have kids. So, I mean, you can leave your bitterness at the curb, so to say.
Well, like you said earlier, it's not the women, it's the system.
Yeah, it's not fair. The system itself is not fair, and it is definitely one-sided. You know what I mean? In regardless to anywhere. I mean, it's the system, you know, and it's like this whole movement of just believe them. You know how many times a woman has said, there's been 2 times in my life where a woman has said that I supposedly raped them. That's never happened. I will tell you, and I've been very honest with our listeners of exactly the wrongings I've done in my life, and I admitted them openly in court of the ones that I took onus on and made my amends to society through that. But I have never, ever raped a woman in my life, nor have I ever committed some sort of sexual violence, nor have I ever been sexually discriminant towards a woman or any of that kind of stuff. That stuff has never happened in my life. But some women will lie. You know, especially coming from the addiction world that we come from.
Well, anybody can lie.
Exactly. And so to say that just believe them because you need to believe a supposed victim. I mean, I was a victim of childhood sexual abuse. And in saying that, I'm not saying that you should go after my accuser saying, you're wrong. I mean, there's evidence. You need to have evidence. And I needed to come. The onus is upon me. My responsibility is to come up with the evidence of how that happened.
Well,
right?
I think it's a different case with kids. It's not like a kid can make up a story of being raped when the child's young like that. They don't have that.
Well, I think there's definitely
Awareness.
I think there's suggestiveness that can happen from parent to parent. I've seen that. I've actually advocated for a guy where that had happened to him, where the child was saying something that was totally incorrect because they may have been manipulated by the mother to say those things.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff does happen. So to get into the genericness of deception, I mean, anything is possible, but the thing that doesn't lie is evidence for the most part. Evidence doesn't lie. Facts are facts unless they're manipulated.
Yeah, unless cops plant the evidence.
Or it's manipulated. It's taken out of context, or however it's presented, or a bias of the person presenting that evidence or fact, right? Then it becomes tainted, right?
Yeah.
Another group that I ran across was the Good Man Project. So this is a forum, and I'm saying on the record right now, they're good. They're great.
I just looked up the website real quick before we started the show, and there's a lot of good content.
Yeah.
Lots.
And
About any topic.
They don't play sides. They're not. So one of the things that I really found was it seems to be that it's an honest forum more in the middle of the spectrum.
Neutral.
Yeah. And then also there is a great insight. I would suggest the major part I see is this site is not polarized with right or left philosophy. They're literally just taking things and talking about it and saying, this is what our suggestion is, kind of like what we do here on Life's Terms.
Yeah. I
right?
was just gonna say that.
So I kind of really appreciate the Good Man's Project, and they are kind of linked up with Movember.
Oh,
right?
really?
So like it's kind of neat in that context. Movember is one of our people that we like very, very much. But like I said, Good Man Project is essentially, at the end of the day, they are just a forum group that's a great informative site for women who are raising little boys and looking for some sort of insight about what they can do on certain things. Or it's also about men looking for their own health needs and how to change their life, so to say.
How to live their best life.
Yeah, or change even in different ways, or to change in different ways to be the best that they can possibly be, even though they may think that they are the best that they are, right? I mean, some of us grandstand and say, I'm already good, I don't have anything to change.
Yeah.
Well, I would suggest you're probably somebody who might need help with something, because you're missing something, maybe, right?
Yeah, there's a difference between being humble and
being ignorant about yourself.
yeah.
I mean, I think that's that moral inventory and being honest with yourself, right? How honest are you with yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch foot right away to Movember. So the Movement Foundation. The Movement Foundation started some time ago, and one of the things that they did is that's why one of the things that where this had started was our fathers, partners, brothers, and friends face a health crisis that isn't being talked about. Men are dying too young, and we can't afford to stay silent. So that's why they took action. They took action 15 years ago. So in 2000, they had started, and by 2030, they'll reduce the number of men dying prematurely by 25% as their mission, right? Then the next thing that they're going to, and then, of course, there's us who are rocking the good old mustache that I'll shave off at the end of the month, and anybody willing to give a donation to Movember, please put in your donation, shave off Justin's mustache.
I'll donate it to pay. I'll pay right now for you to shave that thing off.
I can only do it at the end of the month. Then they also report they're financially responsible. They report all of their earnings every year and who they're giving their their money too, like cancer research, so on and so forth. Their work that they're involved in right now, so like the organization, so on and so forth, is the state of men's health is in a crisis, like I had said, and the foundation is uniquely placed to address the crisis at a global level. They're funding groundbreaking projects all over the world, engaging with men where they are to understand what works best to help make change happen sooner. So they kind of like are the positive side of MRA. I don't really want to compare them to MRA because I think they're a hell of a lot more positive than MRA. But the one thing that I have seen is that they're taking geographical issues of men and then putting a positive spin on that. Right? Like they're not getting into this whole battle between feminism and men's right activists. They're not wading into that pool. Neither do we.
No.
You know? I mean, I think that's kind of the standpoint that we take, and if it came off that way, I would apologize if you took it that way. You know? I mean, that's not what we're about. We're not about dividing who we are. We're just,
I love my mom too much to talk shit about women.
well, and I think it's one of these things too where I think what we were getting at, because I've seen a couple of comments where people are like, oh, you guys hate women, blah blah blah, especially in Movember 2, because we were talking about suicide rates, so on and so forth, and the exclusivity of men. I think what we were just doing was we were talking about the contributing factors of why men might be so sensitive about exclusivity in society, right? Society is changing, and we're having a very difficult time accepting the way that it is, right? There needs to be an ease into a graduality that we're comfortable with as a group.
How is it?
Right?
How is it changing right now?
Well, I think we kind of discussed that in that part 2 series where we were talking about just the advocation, right? And the fact that, you know, a little bit of the employment gap in certain fields, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I agree with the reason why they're there, right? Like women are nurture, so for them to be in the healthcare field just makes sense, but maybe not so much as a slasher in the bush.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a reason for why our nature dictates where we are within our professions, right? So we kind of talked about that in that episode. And then the other thing about Movember too was, like I said, their biggest thing here is by 2030, they literally say that they'll have reduced the number of men dying permanently by 25%, which is a huge statistic. That's fucking massive.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's really big. And then their story, The Legend of the Mustache. Let's get into that. So I'm just going to read this right off of their website. So 2 mates, Travis Garner and Luke Slattery, I think, probably butchering their names, met up for a quiet beer in Melbourne, Australia, and the idea that sparked Movember is born. The mustache had all but disappeared from fashion trends. Could they bring it back? They found 30 guys willing to take up the challenge. And so that's basically what it boils down to, is growing a mustache, getting donations in order to shave it off, and then you basically hand that donation over to Movember, right? And then that's basically why we do the mustache on our face. The values that Movember stands for. Again, this is just a bit of a reiteration of some of the stuff that they want to reduce the number of 25% by 2030, but they also have a value of humble. We should never forget why we are here. I think that's kind of what we had talked about in episode 2, right? We should never forget why men are here. And I said, we're animals. And one of the fundamental things that we do as men, right, is we are that aggressor, right? There's a necessary need for us in society. And we had talked about why maybe sometimes we might feel suppressed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remarkable experience. We're creating remarkable experiences for our people and our community. That's one of the values, and I think any man could really take that on as their own, right? Team Movember, we enable every person to be their best, right? That's one of the values of Movember, and I think anybody could really take that on as just their own personal value. Change agent. So this is Movember saying that they're a change agent. We must think and act differently to have an everlasting impact on the face of men's health. Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
Right? The suicide rate has to change in men. It has to change. It's ridiculous that we're dying of our own hands faster than anything that an illness can do to us. Right? That's just a ridiculous statistic in my mind, and I wish mental health for men was easier for us to find. Right? We talked a substantial amount about prostate and testicular cancer in the last episodes.
Yeah.
And we touched almost an hour of suicide prevention and what suicide looks like for men and contributing factors for that. One of the other things that I want to touch on with Movember is their funding opportunities. So some of their funding opportunities is you can go right to their site, which is www.movember.ca, and you can give to them $5, $10, whatever it may be, but it will definitely go to their supporters, such as here in Canada, it would be the Prostate Cancer of Canada. So they donate a lot of their money in order for prostate cancer research here in Canada. And they also donate some of their money towards things as the Mental Health Society here in Canada and stuff like that. Down in America, they essentially do the same thing, but they have a couple of other not-for-profits that they also donate their money to. So like I said, I think that Movember is probably one of the best men's organizations out there, and I will promote them all day long, as we just have right now. I think they're one of the best organizations out there. I approached them to see what they could give me for us to talk with you guys about over this episode, and they were very nice, and they gave me a nice media package and the whole bit. And basically that's why we're doing the wrap up of Movember. About Movember.
Yeah.
And this will probably be a reoccurring theme for November. Time and time, year and year, again and again, we'll be doing what it takes in order to get this message out there.
I seen something on that Good Men.
Yeah.
They were talking about the male lizard brain.
Oh, yeah?
Well, what is that?
I didn't look into that, but it's probably an article about...
It was about
the hierarchy, maybe?
No, it was about male insecurities.
Oh, okay.
But I don't get the lizard brain. What is that?
I don't know. I didn't read that article.
Okay.
But I would suggest anybody go to that site and find out. I mean, we could probably I didn't read that article. But I did read another article about where they were talking about MRAs.
Yeah.
And how disingenuous that is to just come up with a fight between men and feminism. Right? I mean, that to me just perpetuates the division.
Yeah, fight fire with fire.
I mean, it's one of these things where we both have to get to a place where women need to accept that they don't know what it is to be a man, and a man needs to accept that we don't know what it is to be a woman, and find common ground in that, and then start from there, right? You can't go tit for tat like, well, you have this, therefore, and like I have this and you have that, and it's not a trade-off. I mean, men and women are bio different. You know what I mean? We are engineered differently in our brains. Just like that book had said, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. There's a reality to that. We're completely different animals. I mean, our DNA dictates all this stuff, but really the hormonal piece in our body, we are completely different animals. Completely different. There's a reason for that. We cohabitate in the most mutual way that we possibly can, but I don't get along with a woman as I get along with a man.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm a homosexual because I get along with a man differently than I get along with a woman. It's just a flavor of variety, right? There's a different way. It's called adaptability, and we adapt towards that significant partner or that other partner or that other gender or that same gender. There's an adaptability that needs to take place, right? You can't make somebody into something that they're not, you know? Now we're going to get into the bulk of things. So let's touch on Jordan Peterson a little bit. I know you hadn't heard about him prior to the show, But I really enjoy Jordan Peterson. I've listened to a lot of his podcasts. I know he's right now a huge deal out there. And
He's a psychologist, right?
clinical psychologist. So there's a little bit of difference between a psychologist and a clinical psychologist. He can actually prescribe you meds, and he's actually done clinical trials on behavioral changes, right? He went to Harvard, so he was a Harvard professor at one time, and then he got into some shit with speech about the Bill C-116 here in Canada about hate speech and gender uses. He said flat out that he wouldn't use them, and he wouldn't call anybody by their preferred gender. He was just going to call them or they or whatever, but he wasn't going to say Z's or any of that. And he was actually asked to leave Sir Wilfrid Laurier University, which is in University of Toronto. He was a professor there, and that's where basically the hoopla of Jordan Peterson started. And he came out with a book called 12 Rules for Life, The Antidote to Chaos. Kenny and I both haven't read this book yet, but probably next Movember, we're going to make an entire episode about that book, because it's pretty substantial, some of the stuff that's in there and the cliff notes that I've read. So if anybody hasn't read that book and is looking for some sort of guide to change in a positive way, I would suggest this would be a very good read. Some of the feminist groups out there really dislike Jordan Peterson because he won't pacify them or placate them with the terminologies that they want him to use. And this, again, is just, I think, like, there's extremists in feminism as much as there's extremists with MRAs, right? And when you look at the Good Man Project, you kind of lay in the middle of everything, which is probably the best place to be, Jordan Peterson, too, his big thing is taking on responsibility. Kenny and I have definitely been examples of taking on responsibility. We touched on it about 20 minutes ago in this conversation about what responsibility looks like and what it can do for you. We're gonna expand into that. And yep. Jordan Peterson also, I think, just put a mustache on his face for Movember.
Oh, great!
Which is kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you take responsibility today?
So one of the things that I think we could talk about is making our beds in the morning, right? So Jordan Peterson says this in his book, where his philosophy is you have to make your bed in the morning in order to take responsibility right away in the morning, take ownership, right?
Yeah.
So I learned this in treatment. Basically, in the treatment center that I was in, you have to make your bed every day. And then also when I went to 3/4 halfway house after treatment, it was the same rules. But I never really understood what it was doing. And you and I have both expressed that if I don't make my bed, that's probably the day I'm going to relapse. I'm in fear of that.
Relapse, go to jail.
Yeah. Like the whole fucking day is going to hell, right?
Rob a bank.
Yeah, that kind of shit, right? So I think that's one of the fundamental things that has to happen. See, you can say in your head all the time, I'm going to take responsibility, but without action reinforcing those words, it means shit.
Yeah.
It's for nothing. Right. And one of those things is like making your bed. What does your room look like? Like he says, change the world by cleaning up your bedroom. Right. How real is that? Right. Like, I mean, you could be out there all day long doing what you're doing, being of service and all that stuff. And then you're coming home and essentially your house still looks like shit because in your head, it's still shit. You know what I mean? If you're not taking care of yourself, your head's fucked too.
They say that like the cleanliness of your house or your room is comparable to your mental health.
Yeah, there's definitely a link to that, right? And I agree. I mean, there's definitely something about that keeps your head kind of in the game, so to say. And then when you decide to start cleaning your house, all of a sudden you start looking at yourself and you're like, maybe this needs to change, maybe that needs to change as well, right? And because once you start thinking about change constantly and you start taking stock and inventory about what you're doing, your mind doesn't really stop from that when you see benefits of it. You know what I mean? Once you start that process, it's very difficult to stop it.
Yes. As soon as you start seeing benefits from any sort of change, and it just snowballs. You become almost addicted to the result.
The one thing that I've seen, though, is if people don't see a significant enough change, they're out. They turn the water cold for themselves.
No staying power.
Yeah, like they'll see a bit of change and they'll even admit it. Yeah, life is a little bit better, but not exactly where I want it to be.
Yeah, I see a lot of time with people at the gym.
And then next thing you know, they just stop. They stop dead, right?
Yeah.
And that's really, really unfortunate because now the ball just starts rolling a little bit, right? And then it doesn't really get anywhere. And I think I've seen that in recovery. I've seen guys, we used to say this all the time, like, how many people in recovery have an expiration date? They can come in I've seen some people come in for 2 years. That's their expiration date. And then boom, they're right back out there using, right? I've seen some people come in for 3 or 4 months. Boom, their expiration date's up and they're out. And why is that? It's because they see the change and the benefits, but they don't want to sustain it. And that, in my opinion, just to sprout from that, is a 2-part parcel. One is that they haven't really given up what they're trying to change. Or secondly, the other thing is that they don't have enough self-esteem to continue that change.
Yeah, both of those could be right. There could be other contributing factors.
Yeah.
Like circumstantial or coping mechanisms or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, and then there's also that hard tone too, like anything is an excuse not to continue with change, right?
Yeah.
Like
Or
I've heard that from
like a glass ceiling type thing, like a fear of success.
yeah, like that's the whole piece about self-esteem.
Yeah.
Right?
Self-worth.
Yeah, like I don't believe that this change, I'm worthy of it. Or they hold on to their old ideas, right? We hear this all the time where it's like they were ready to change. However, they didn't get rid of stock and trade. They didn't get rid of the most negative pieces about them, right? They held on to it like a secret. And now I used to say this all the time, you're just as sick as your secrets. And if you have those secrets, you're probably a sick person, right? You have to tell it to somebody, at least one person, right? Because if you're sitting with those secrets in your own head, that's the place where you'll always go back to and see this is, and I would say to myself, see how deplorable I am, see how much of a piece of shit I am. This is what I do. And then I hold on to that baggage, right?
Yeah, and as soon as you think about it, you become it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very quick, right? So to take responsibility, back to that note of responsibility, take responsibility and to say to yourself, that's got to change. And if that's coming from keeping your room clean and your bed made, I mean, those are significant advances, right?
If that's all you got to do to get the ball rolling in the other direction, go make your fucking bed right now.
Well, and I think that's the other piece too, segueing into not being a victim anymore.
No, own your shit.
Right? If you own what you have done, there's power in ownership because then you can change it. If you decide that they have done something to me and that's where you're at, you can't change them, but 100% you can change you. Right?
Yeah. Like if you're in a state of victimhood, blaming everything else outside of you, it's pathetic.
Well, and I think, it is because then you're passing the buck. You're not able to take on the responsibility of what you've actually done or where you're actually going.
Yeah. Like we're all responsible for where we're heading.
And it's nice. It's kind of nice to be like, well, these are, like you said, circumstantial situations where it's not up to me if I had it my way. Well, guess what? Those people dictating whatever they're dictating to you, there's always a way of adaptability around it. And if you can make that adaptability, you are going to find your solution about something that seems dire. You know what I mean? There's many dire situations in life, but if you can find the adaptability, you will overcome. It's like this. There's this saying, right? Everybody's been victim to this saying. I can't take any more. I just can't take any more.
And then more happens.
There's no more I can take today. And it's fucking noon. And this is what you're saying. But the reality is the next hours are going to come by and more is coming. And guess what you're going to do? You're going to take more. Because the grandstanding statement of saying, I can't take any more, well, slit your fucking wrist then. You know,
Call for help.
Yeah, like that's your choice. What's the alternative? Right? You were going to take more. More is coming. You know? You can't sit back and say, I can't take any more. No. You're going to take more.
Anytime anybody around me says can't, I always say, I don't understand that word. What does that word mean? I just don't get it.
Well, I remember in early recovery, I was dealing with a bunch of stuff, some of my own making and some of my wreckage, which is all of my own making. But some were like right there in my moment, and like I was dating a woman. And I should have never been dating a woman in early recovery. And secondly, I had all this court shit coming at me fast and furious. And one of the things that I had seen was there's all this stuff happening. And I was talking to my mom, and I was like, it feels like if I could use the metaphor of a hurricane, I'm just always in a hurricane and I'm never getting out of this. That's what it seems like. And then all of a sudden I was talking to my mom a little while ago, and I was like, the waters are placid now. There's no more hurricane. And she's like, yeah, but you know what? You know the kind of adversity that you can handle without getting high or drunk. You can deal now. And if it wasn't for that hurricane continuously happening for 3 or 4 years of your life, you would never know how to be grateful for what you have and the calm placidness of what you have now. And the ability to know that you can deal with any kind of adversity without having to get high or drunk or something to take you out of that moment. She's like, that's more strength than what most people have in this world.
I know the best drug ever to take you out of the moment. Gratitude.
Yeah.
Like even for me, like just last night, like something was happening. I was having a conversation with my significant other, and she was like stressed about life in general. And I just kept saying to her, what are you grateful for? What are you think about it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Well, your feet, your hands, your kids, your health. And then right away the shift. So like anybody that's in victimhood or in anything, like focus on what you're thankful for. And it pulls you right out of it.
Yeah, it does. It can be the gap, but it can also, that victimization can also lead you, in my opinion, towards depression. Right? Like it's kind of like you get to a fork in the road, and either you're going to choose this or you're going to choose that. And if you choose that goes towards the more dark hole and you just concentrate on that, well, then you're hooped. If you decide to find gratitude, or the other time where I've had that situation where I couldn't find gratitude that day, and I just said, you know what, tomorrow's going to be a better day than today. Today's a write-off, and that's fine. Today's a write-off. It was shit all the way through it, the time that I woke up to the time that I'm going to go to bed, and that's fine. But tomorrow it's going to be better. All I have to say is that tomorrow is going to be better, and when I wake up in the morning, all I need to say to myself is today is going to be better than yesterday. And as long as I can remember that, likely that day is going to be better. Right? And when even even in shitty moods, we all get into shitty moods. And when somebody says, you know, you can get out of this funk, sometimes it's the last thing you want to hear, but you know deep down inside you can. And then almost there becomes this like stubbornness where you're like, fuck that, I just want to be an asshole today. Right? That happens too, right? But that's, again, those shortcomings, right? So claiming ownership of what you're doing, I mean, you have to eventually apologize for that, right? But apology means that there needs to be a change. If not, your sorries mean nothing. Like you ever hear the saying, your sorries your sorries always fall on deaf ears?
Yeah.
Well, why are they deaf?
Because you're saying sorry all the time.
That's right.
I always tell people, they say sorry, save your sorries for when you really need them.
You know what I say is, I'll tell people, I say, I only accept apologies with a behavioral change.
Yes.
Right?
Well, an apology without the behavioral change isn't even an apology.
Well, and when people say I'm so sorry for that, I say, well, I don't accept your sorry.
Yeah. Do something.
Yeah. They'll say, what do you mean? And I say, well, I only accept apologies with a behavioral change. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not asking for much. I'm just asking for you to do something a little bit differently.
Yeah. Don't say sorry. Just don't do it again.
So, and then I think with all of this ownership, your health and your mental health in part and parcel is your own responsibility, right? I mean, Jordan Peterson reaffirms this to us all the way through. Anything that he talks about, anything that he's written about, he reaffirms it's your responsibility. You feel like an asshole today? Guess what? It's your responsibility. You feel depressed? It's your responsibility to find help, right?
No, I've never heard that before. It's your responsibility for your mental health.
It is. You're damn right it is.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility.
I can see it now, but I've just never heard it said.
It's your responsibility to take care of your physical body. We talked about this before where it was like, okay, so we live in Canada and we have great healthcare. It's fantastic. You know what the problem is with great healthcare?
People take advantage of it.
Or you didn't take care of yourself prior to getting some illness that's going to kill you.
Yeah, so now we have to pay for it.
That's right. Secondly, sure, you can get testicular cancer and that's a horrible thing. There's nothing you can preemptively do to not get testicular cancer.
But be accountable and get checked.
That's right. So that's taking ownership. That's being responsible for your health, right? That's also exhibiting some sort of humility and some sort of humbleness in order to, no matter who you're sitting across the table from, whether it be a woman doctor or a male doctor, letting them do what they have to do in order to see if there are real concerns about your testicular health.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do. That's ownership, right? That's being responsible. And I know it's easier said than done, but we're going to get into what you actually have to do. But it is your responsibility. Your mom's gone. You know, if you're a man, your mom's not in your life in the context of she's telling you what to do anymore. God, I hope not. She's still laying out your fucking clothes. Like, what are you talking about?
If I stay at my mom's house, she'll do my laundry for me.
Oh my God. So yeah, I think that responsibility is a big piece. And you and I, we talked about this in Movember, the kickoff, of losing that responsibility or the example of responsibility from the men that were in our lives or lack thereof.
Yeah, well,
Right.
I just didn't have any responsibility from the get-go. I didn't even understand what the word responsibility meant.
Yeah.
For the first 80% of my life.
So even in those situations, such as like for me, my bio dad just wasn't there. Just wasn't there. And there was a guy in my bio here on Life's Terms where I talked about this guy named Jim who kind of showed me how to, walk to the left of a woman closer to the road, not because she's not for sale, but just so she doesn't get splashed by a fucking puddle.
Yeah.
Right? Like he taught me that stuff, how to open a door, pull out a chair, all that stuff. My dad never taught me any of that kind of stuff. He just literally was not around for that kind of stuff. So Jim taught me some sort of responsibility, but because it wasn't predominantly enforced throughout my everyday life, it was very difficult to understand why I wasn't a victim. And then being victimized as a child really, really young, not understanding what a victim was by definition, I just thought I was a victim in everything. Right? That's how that perpetuated itself in a very generalized form for me.
Well, because it gave you something. Like being a victim, like patched things up for you. It took your account. It took your responsibility away, so it wasn't your fault anymore.
Well, yeah, it didn't. Yeah, exactly. Right. I think anybody in addiction does that. Right. Like I've heard many.
That's why I don't like the term addiction. I'm addicted. I'm just an addict.
Yeah. Well,
relapse is part of addiction.
So when I hear that kind of stuff, you know where I intuitively go is they're not ready for me. And it's time for me to move on to somebody who's ready for me. Because I'm going to waste my time with that person until they finally hit their bottom. And that's the way how I see that, right? I am not going to invest my time in somebody where I want more recovery than they do. Can't do it.
I don't know. If you teach them a different terminology about the words and teach them show them how that they're using that word as leverage to keep being a victim.
Sure. I mean, if that's the olive branch you want to extend, fine.
I'll throw it out there.
But I just know that there's 50 other people that I can go and help ready for me. Yeah. And this guy's not ready. So I'm not going to take my time away from the 50 others for this one person. You know what I mean? There has to be, it's like this. You can be sentenced to treatment, but the likelihood of treatment actually doing anything is less likely because you were sentenced. It was an alternative measure to something that was an easier, softer way. Hate to say it, there's not an easier, softer way in this world. You have to take responsibility in order for it to become easier and softer, right? Life is a punch in the face. And because it's a punch in the face, you need to accept that this is the situation that you're now in. And it's going to get better. But this is the situation that you're in. That's how you turn sour water into good water. You look at it and you say, yeah, this is pretty shitty right now. That's okay. It's going to get better. We're going to move on. This is not going to kill me. Mm-hmm. But if there's no willingness, the other participant has to be willing. Not because it's an easier, softer way, but because they accepted the responsibility that it's probably going to be tough. Because if they accept that responsibility, then change is going to happen. And that's the same thing with us. It's like this. Going to the gym is not easy in the first 2-3 weeks. It's hard. Your body hurts. It's difficult to find the motivation. It's hard to show up even. But after those 2 or 3 weeks, or after even the first hour or the first 15 minutes of the workout, all of a sudden becomes better. Well, why did it become better? Because you accepted responsibility that you had to be there and change was necessary for you to get a better life.
I'm struggling right now to get back into the gym, even though I'm a freaking trainer.
It's one of those, but you see that mental motivation, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a big deal. The only way to get past it is that the end game, the end goal, you're going to feel better.
Yeah.
So you have to lie to yourself all the way up to the door.
Yeah.
But when you got to the door, guess what you did? You took responsibility. And your responsibility doesn't mean shit if you're saying in your head, I'm going to take responsibility, but you don't make it to the fucking door. Right? The only reason why responsibility works is because you went to the door, you walked through, and you're getting what you need to get done. That's why it works. And you can't make it an easier, softer way by saying, well, let's use this and let's use that. That's faking it till you make it. And that works. Granted, that works. But sometimes, and I say this to people all the time, and especially in addiction, I'll say this to people all the time, day in, day out. First thing I say to them is, are you ready to change? Because I'm going to fuck up your using for the rest of your life, and it's never going to be the same again. Never is it going to be the same again. And the amount of fucked up I'm going to give you for your change, for your addiction to change, you may not be able to deal with. If you don't want to stop, I'm not the guy for you. This way, right away, it's just like you and I, we were talking about business. I don't want to be sitting around a business table or the boardroom table with some asshole. I want a lion with me. Well, how do I know they're a lion? I'm going to inundate them with all the information that I have about business right away to see how they disseminate that information in their own head. If they get flustered and run away, because if that's the person they are, that's not the person I need around me. It's the same thing with addiction. I don't want to work with somebody who's going to say, well, I am an addict. Yeah, you're an addict. Get over it. Get over it. Recovery is very, very quick. It all takes up to you how long you want to be recovered for. And it's all up to you how long the process of recovery is going to take. I can tell you today, recovery can take 3 days. After 3 days, you will be recovered. No longer than that. 3 days, and it's done. 100% it's done. The only two things that are necessary is a willingness and an honesty to proceed through a process. It's not a fucking miracle. It's not magicianry. It's none of that stuff. What it is willingness and honesty in order to take responsibility for your actions. There's no way out. There is no other easier, softer way. That doesn't exist. Easier, softer ways exist in the context that you're going to continue the behaviors that you're continuing with a new justification. That's an easier, softer way. And that's as far as it lays. You could say, yeah, well, I need to lose 120 pounds. Instead of looking at addiction, I need to lose 120 pounds. But you know how I'm going to do it? I'm going to do it over the next 10 years. Right? I'm going to do it over the next 10 years by doing 5 minutes of cardio a day. And I'm going to suck down my diet to where I'm only consuming 300 calories a day.
You'll die.
But see, that's a justification. You see what I'm saying? That's a justification with the same old behaviors. Or I'll eat the same burgers every day, but at least I'm getting 10 minutes of fucking cardio in a day. What? That's just reinforcing old behaviors with a different justification, right? The means don't the sacrifice doesn't meet the means of change. There needs to be a sacrifice. There's going to be a hard decision. Make it, take ownership, claim responsibility, and it's no longer a hard decision. That decision is no longer hard.
Massive action.
It's just a move. It's a change, right? So that being said, me up on my pulpit talking about responsibility, I'm going to go to this. Why is claiming responsibility most important for you, but also as an example to anybody that's around you?
Oh, because if I don't have the responsibility to take action in the right direction, and like one big thing for me is do the next right thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we always have a decision to make every second of the day.
Yeah.
Just always choosing the next right thing is going to perpetuate me forward in the direction that I want to go, and it's going to leave a good example for everybody that's around me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also even the young ones that are around us.
You like my kids?
Young men, young women. Like, I mean, it's like this, right? And this is fucked up to say, but and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, but it's so the truth. You and I actually look for a piece of our mother and our significant partner.
Oh, all the time. It's actually kind of disgusting.
Yeah, there's a piece to that, right? Well, guess what our daughters do?
Look for a dad. Look for a boyfriend like their dad.
That's right. They're always comparing. Right? They're always comparing.
Yeah.
Good dad or bad dad. Doesn't matter. They're always comparing.
I already heard it from my friggin' 9-year-old. There's this boy in class and I have a crush on him and he's funny like you, Dad.
Yeah, see?
Oh my God.
So what are they what is it that you want them to look for in their significant partner? Do you want them to look for the fact that we were criminals? No.
No, hell no.
What you want them to look for is the example that we said about taking responsibility and making hard decisions. That's the onus. That's your onus as an adult, not just your kids, but anybody, your nieces, your nephews, your brother, your sister, any of those people.
I think that's what defines greatness too, is the ability to make those hard decisions.
Well,
and commit to it.
And also the reinforcement to yourself that you can deal with an adverse or afflicted decision and come and surmount in a positive way. Overcome and surmount in a positive way. Right? No matter how difficult it's going to be. And the best thing is your parlay after is that was the hardest decision I ever had to make in my life, but I did it. I did it and I came over. It became me, or I got through it and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Right? Because now when you're talking to those people who, like even us, when we're talking to people out there, sure, I can tell you right now, there's a drug support group on Facebook that looks at our page significantly right now, and I've gotten some feedback from them listening to this show, and one of the things that they have been saying is at least we're talking about how difficult it is in the beginning, but we are going to succumb it.
Yeah.
Right? That's huge. Right? It's the afterthought. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying that even my own personal development with my physical health is easy. It's not fucking easy. I have to work every day in order to get that motivation to go to the gym, pick up those kettlebells, jump on the skipping rope and skip, box. As much as I like it, I still have to motivate myself to do it.
Have you lost any more weight?
Yeah.
Yeah, your face looks skinnier.
We're gonna do a thing with Kettlebell Keith here pretty quick. So maybe where your motivation might come from is we're gonna set up the video.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do a kettlebell circuit from Kettlebell Keith.
People can watch how sweaty of a mess I get.
Jesus Christ! You should see the shit he does. I've been doing it for the last week.
Yeah.
He is an amazing, amazing man when it comes to masochisting your fucking body. But I say that with a laugh because he told me off air, he was like, you'll be successful. He's like, I believe your success is going to be there, but it's going to be hard. I was like,
It's gonna hurt.
yeah, yeah. And I'm not saying that his stuff is too physical. It's too hard to do. It just asks a lot out of you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're overweight like me or you're in fairly good shape.
No, just do it.
It's gonna be tough. It's a tough. I mean, he told me of a celebrity that does his kettlebell circuit, and I'm doing it right now with. I'm doing his kettlebell circuit right now with. I think it's like 20 something kilos, maybe no, like 23 pounds or something like that is what I'm doing it with right now. And then I'm also doing another one with 34 pounds. The guy who's doing the same circuit, people would know, I'm not saying his name, but the guy who's doing the same circuit right now, and he is way physically bigger than me, like by muscle tone, he can only do it with 14 pounds maxed. He cannot do it with bigger, and Kettlebell Keith said it's crazy. I didn't think that, like looking at him, that he's only doing it with 14 pounds. I mean, so as I'm doing this circuit, running through it with this weight, I'm like, it makes me feel kind of good knowing that, right? Because I'm like, yeah, maybe this is going, and I can feel my abs getting tighter. I can feel my legs, because now I'm at a point where I can actually squat and not pop my knees out of place, because that's how heavy I was before.
Practice like you're spreading the floor between your feet, like push your feet to the side. It'll help keep your knees out. And
I've been doing it with a chair, so that I'm guided, or I'll touch the wall, right, to guide me down. Actually, I was kind of complimented a little while ago. I was out with a guy yesterday, gym shopping for that thing, and so anyways, he looked at me and we're sparring or whatever, and I knocked one of my sparring partners out, and I didn't mean to. He literally just walked into something. Okay, hit the ground.
You knocked somebody out yesterday?
No, not yesterday. A couple weeks ago. Not on purpose. He just literally walked into my hand. Sure, I was throwing it, but it wasn't meant to knock him out. And he hit the ground real hard, like the thud, like that, you know. And his head bounced, and he couldn't go to a fight. Like he was supposed to fight a couple of weeks later, and he couldn't make it.
Wow.
So I felt kind of bad about that. And he's like, he's asking me yesterday. He goes, "Well, how heavy are you?" And I said, I'm 280 pounds right now. You fucking hit him with 280 pounds dead square on his chin. He's like, "You're triple my fucking weight." And you just lay him out like that? What the fuck is wrong with you? And I said, "You didn't think I was 280 pounds? That's all I kept thinking in my head, was at least I don't look as big as I am, right? Because like, I will fall into a place, if I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, "Oh, you're a fat fuck, but you're changing." That's where I'm kind of at. I can love myself of who I am inside, but I look at my physical body. My physical body doesn't, and I said this with Kettlebell Keith, it doesn't match who I am, right? Yeah. But I'm getting to that place, right? So when he said that to me, I was like, at least I don't look 280 pounds, you know? And I felt kind of good about that, because it was like, maybe I am gaining muscle to where I don't look what I weigh, right? And I may have to change that 180 pound place. I might actually be 205 toned, right? Because when I tone up, I might be about 205 healthy. 180 was a fighting weight, and I didn't lose my strength. I lost no strength at 180. I dropped to 175, and I just wrecked people. Like, you couldn't stop me. I just pick you up and beat the piss out of you. Didn't matter, right? So
fighting's bad, okay. Don't hit people, okay.
It was, I don't know. And I did take responsibility for knocking that poor guy out. I did. I apologized profusely.
What about the behavior change?
Well, I'm still going to spar him. I mean, it was one of the, like I said, I didn't mean to knock him out, right? Like I really didn't mean to knock him out.
Yeah.
And I can only be sorry for like my actions, and I'm sorry that I knocked him out. But there's it's like back to that fight thing, right? There's two parts to this. You can't play boxing. There's no such thing.
Yeah, if you get in the ring to spar, shit happens, right?
People get hit. People get hurt, right? Yeah. I did say, though, that I'm sorry. Like, we probably shouldn't have sparred so close to his fight.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's probably what we shouldn't have done.
But that's on him, not you.
That's both of us, though. I mean,
no,
sometimes
it's his fight.
But sometimes also being the healthier person, that's also your responsibility, right? Like I know somebody who's in a situation right now where they are I'll use this as an example. They're the healthier person, and they still have an unhealthy person in their life that contributes towards a detrimental depression. Well,
Get rid of the unhealthy person.
and that's their responsibility, being a healthier person in the moment, right?
Yeah.
There's responsibilities that come with that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's how you endorse your own leadership skills, by participating in that leadership skill as an example, as opposed to somebody who is pointing a finger and shooting all over somebody.
Shoulding.
Right? I should all over that fucker, right? I've been known to do that, and I really, really try not to. Even here on the show, I really try not to, you should do this and you should do that. I really, really try to stay away from that because it feels so accusing.
Quit shooting all over the place.
It sucks when people do that, right? Anyway, that's the hour.
What?
Yeah, that's
No
the
way.
hour. Yeah. So if you want to wrap it up,
I'll wrap it up. Hey, everybody, thank you for listening. Please subscribe and share to your friends. You can find our after show blog at www.lifeonlifestermspodcast.com. Please become a Pride member at your soonest convenience and submit your email or write us or talk to us or comment.
and donate to Movember.ca at your soonest convenience, please and thank you.
Continue to be the best you possible.
Have a great Friday.
Don't should everywhere.
Bye for now.
Bye.